Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. Currently, we are in Daniel chapter 11. Now, in the last study, I kind of did a excursion on the details of Daniel 11, where as we look at prophecy, here, as we look at the prophecy that Daniel 11, the book of Daniel, has, in terms of what the book of Daniel is about. Let me go to my other image here. So in Daniel chapter 2, you remember we Nebuchadnezzar is given a dream by God that Daniel interprets. And in what he interprets, what he saw, what Nebuchadnezzar saw, and what the interpretation of it was, this human statue, this human form representing five world ruling kingdoms up into the very moment of the second coming of Jesus. In fact, Jesus coming ends this. It strikes this image at the feet. So from a timeline, now let me go back to my other video, because you see the dream was the image which represented four world ungodly, by the way, world ruling kingdoms, and then the rock represents the kingdom of Jesus coming, striking the image at the feet. I said that's timely, because he didn't just strike the image and destroy it. Like the rock could have hit, for example, the image in the belly, right, the thighs or the chest, and still destroyed the image. But prophetically, he struck, the rock struck the image at the feet. That's the timeline of what is going on, and destroyed this human image. So what we have is, this is my other image here, is the timeline. This is important because the timeline of the prophecies, and if you go back to chapter 7, you see where this Daniel, who is in the, he starts off at the very edge, the very end of the Babylonian kingdom. And so the prophecy talks about then four kingdoms. And then so chapter 7 and 8, the very end, two prophecies at the very end, during the reign of Belshazzar. And Belshazzar, if you remember back in the 5th chapter of Daniel, where his kingdom is destroyed because of his arrogance, where he decided to bring out all the vessels of gold that Nebuchadnezzar had brought from Jerusalem, having destroyed the temple. But in an arrogant attempt, he decided he's going to drink from those vessels of gold, kind of mocking God. You see the handwriting on the wall that in that very night, Babylon is done. So when we get to chapter 9, we're in I think the first year of Darius. And Darius, also, we have the prophecies of the 70-week prophecy during King Cyrus. I'm sorry, I said Darius, I mean Cyrus. During Cyrus, he issues a decree which starts the 70-week prophetic countdown, which brings us to the second coming. But also 69 weeks brings us to the Messiah. And what we studied last time is the prophecy that will be the end of the Persian kingdom and the reign of the Grecian kingdom. And this takes place during what's called the Intertestament period of time. So with your Bible, from Malachi to Matthew, in other words, during that period of time, nearly a 500-year period of time, there was no prophetic word in a sense given. However, there was prophecy that was being fulfilled, and we kind of got a breakdown, we got a detailed breakdown of it in chapter 11. And as I told you before, I didn't do it justice. So again, I'm going to refer you to tons of materials out there. If you just Google Daniel 11 explain, I did read from Hanley's Bible Handbook, and this is sort of like Cliff Notes, okay? The Cliff Notes of it. There are more in-depth studies of that time, and you can relate Daniel chapter 11 with what was going on in the Grecian kingdom, and also the end of the Mede and Persian kingdoms, okay? And so, very fascinating, I mean, very detailed during that period of time, which brings us actually to the Roman. So with this, let's bring it up because I want to. We're gonna go into again. I want you to one other thing I want to bring up before I go into this. Excuse me. The timeline here. So if you look at this timeline here with the Grecian kingdom, the Greece kingdom or Alexander the Great. And I have to say this. Just I wasn't going to really comment on it because I think a lot of it is silly, but what is always funny is that this chapter 11 gives such detailed description of what is going on. Remember, 200 years before it happened. Some people tried to say that this had to be given at the end, so around at the end of the Grecian period, the Greece period, which they offer no proof. But the idea is that a prophecy, God gave such detailed prophecy during this period of time. It is amazing. So let's go back to, I'm going to pick this up around, now, as in order to understand a lot of this, because again, unless we have a side-by-side, there's no reference in our mind, right? So when it says, for example, verse 31 says, the forces will rise up, this is verse 31, his forces will rise up and desecrate the temple fortresses. They will abolish the daily sacrifice and set up the abomination of desolation. Now, some people would also say, was this the fulfillment of Daniel in one of Daniel's 70 weeks? So what I'm going to say is, at the very least, it could be what's called a near fulfillment and then an ultimate fulfillment. And because from this perspective, this is a future prophecy that Daniel was given. But the difference here is the one under what's called the Antichrist, which we're going to get into, and what's called the beast, the man of sin. He says he makes a covenant with those for a week, and then in the middle of the week he breaks the covenant. So that would be the difference. Okay, that would be the difference. That tells me that this is not referring to that. However, I think from a historical standpoint, one of these kings did go into the temple and offer some kind of pig's blood on the altar, something like that. All right. So then he goes on and says, verse 33, those who are wise among the people will give understanding to many, yet they will die by sword and flame and be captured and plundered for a time. When defeated, they will be helped by some, but many others will join them insincerely. Some will be wise and false, so that they may be refined, purified, and cleansed until the end of time, for it will still come at the appointed time. So somewhere around here, he seems to now goes over into, again, this end time, this last kingdom that is yet to arise, the feet of toes, you can call it the feet of toes. The 10 toes, actually. So then he says, verse 36, then the king will do whatever he wants. So this is what I'm saying. I think for sure now we're talking about the fifth of the kingdoms, the last of the kingdoms. because there are some descriptors unique to this kingdom, this ruler, which is usually referred to as the Antichrist. Okay. But I think he's also the beast and the man of sin. He says the king will do whatever he wants. He will exalt and magnify himself above every god. This right here is one of his unique descriptions here. That the arrogance. So notice what he says. He will exalt and magnify himself above every god. And he will say outrageous things against the God of gods. So right here is, excuse me, is the this unique description of this man. Okay, and again, we've studied this pretty much, I think, in almost every prophecy that Daniel was given. He brings this guy up, and of course, Paul, remember, talks about him. He sits in the temple of God, proclaiming he is God. So that's why I think that this here is different. The abomination that caused this desolation brought on by him is different than what we just read. Let's see. Then the king will do whatever he wants. He will exalt and magnify himself above every god. He will say outrageous things against the God of gods. Now, it's kind of interesting. Notice he says he will say outrageous things. I'm always amazed with atheists. By the way, he's not an atheist. So let's make this kind of different right here. What is interesting that I find about this guy and other atheists, however, that they do spend a lot of time on whom they reject, the God they reject. Atheists, of course, will say he doesn't exist, never has existed. The earth and the creation universe was created randomly, okay? But he's not an atheist. He is speaking against the God of gods, acknowledging him, but in an arrogant way, thinking he's better, stronger, mightier. He says he will be successful until the time of wrath is completed. Now this term, until the time of wrath is completed. Because what has been decreed will be accomplished. Now, right here, we need to understand what is going on during the last, you could say, 7-year period. The 70th week of Daniel. The Great Tribulation. Okay, the Great Tribulation. And it's important to understand this because so many people get it. I think they mix things up and thus miss a kind of the bigger issue, the bigger point. So one, this period of time, this 7-year period of time that God has decreed, and notice what he says right here, until what has he will be successful until the time of wrath is completed. Simultaneously, what you have is this reign of the Antichrist. And I'm only using the term Antichrist because I think most people are most familiar with that term. And even though that term, in a sense, has been kind of ascribed to it, there are the verse I think we read where you could say Antichrist. What he is mostly known for is being the beast or the man of sin, the son of destruction. So that's his major. So he says that, but during this period of time where you see the evil of man, the sinful nature of man manifest in such a way. So if you read Revelations chapter 13, where it talks about this man, this whole, You got a whole chapter about the beast and the false beast, the second beast, the false prophet, where Satan gives him his power and causes all through deception to worship him. That sinfulness is so bad that they will even worship the dragon or Satan that gives him his power. In other words, there won't be this issue of debate. In fact, I'm going to say atheism won't even be around. And that's just my wild opinion right here. They won't have a need to deny God. Under this rule, they're going to, the world will embrace him. The world will embrace him, this man of sin. But they also will embrace Satan, who gives them his power. So during this time, this is why we're not living in this time, by the way, you know. And oftentimes people will look at, every time you have some figure, excuse me, that comes along, and some, like the fact that the presidential candidate was just recently survived an assassination attempt. And some people want to call that the Antichrist. That's silly. It's not, because not everybody likes the guy. And certainly the world is not wondering after God. His base may be foolishly wondering after him, but certainly no one. If you go back and remember, he was in a world conference with he was in a conference with some world leaders, and he made this kind of outrageous statement that he's been the greatest president since whatever. And they laughed at him, and he go, "Oh, I wasn't expecting that." So look, so he's definitely not the man of sin or the beast. When the man of sin or the beast comes along, you notice, first of all, he says he will do whatever he wants. So unless you can say a figure is on the earth doing that now. And notice he said he would exalt himself and magnify himself above every god. And then he would say outrageous things against God. Notice he will concentrate his fury, his ire, his anger towards God, his hatred towards God, and then the people of God. So we're not there yet. This man has not arisen yet. Okay, he hasn't arisen yet. So, but, and again, so this is a very distinctive mark, okay, of who he is, so that we won't have to wonder, hey, when is this guy going to appear? We don't have to wonder about that. That would be a mark when he comes. We will know, hey, that would be a mark when you say the beast, okay? So we're going to pick it up in the next, we'll pick it up in the next study. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. And I will see you in the next study.